Misfits, let's face it, the pandemic got weird. Here we are a few years after it, and it still feels kind of strange. People picked up all types of hobbies, from disc golf to gaming, comedy shows on Zoom video calls became a thing, and professional sports teams played in stadiums that were empty and so silent that fake audience cheering had to be edited into broadcasts. And people, for the most part, well, they were caring for other people. But who was caring for the birds?
What did he say?
My guest tonight went in a slightly different direction during the pandemic. After a nasty relationship and breakup, Leonor started taking daily walks to clear her mind, and she noticed an influx in the amount of crows in the area where she was walking. One day, she started feeding them, and soon after, she started creating a daily routine and relationship with the corvids on her walks. She's now a Corvid rehabilitator and a social media influencer with over 85,000 followers, where she educates and shares the amazing relationships that she's created with these fascinating and often looked down upon birds. We discuss crow lore and how humanity's relationship with the birds has changed, how her life has changed because of these animals, and whether or not birds are real. Misfits, let's start a crow army. Wubba lubba dub dub. Please welcome Leonor from the Corvid Corner.
Playing the Misfit Heroes podcast.
Every now and then I do an episode for other people. I do that pretty often. This time, I'm going to be honest, this one's just for me. I am fascinated by your content and the things that you do. Yeah, for sure. I am just continually just mesmerized by the content that you put out on social media. You know, you are the Corvid Corner, and you deal with crows. Everything on your page is about crows. What started this whole thing? Do you have any background with the animals, or what piqued your interest in crows?
I have the background now. Around a year ago, I certified myself as a wildlife rehabilitator, and then I specialized as well on these birds. I didn't have any background when I started. I just had a keen interest in birds generally, and what really kicked out things was the pandemic, and I had just come out of a really bad mental breakdown. I was quite low, and I was recommended to do some walks in nature, which I did. And in those walks, I did come across a pair of crows, and I really, really kept meeting them literally every day. They were always on the same spot. Also, because I do follow a very a very strict routine in a way. So I used to walk past that place every single day at the same time, and they would be there. And then from there on, it just took off. You know, I started bringing some peanuts for them, started talking to them. They started bringing their friends over. And the rest is history, really. And it kind of threw me into a completely different career path, because I am an academic, so my main job is actually working at a local university as a principal lecturer, but on a completely different subject. But one of the positives of that is the fact that I can actually access quite a lot of research that is not readily available, for others to see. And over the years, I started reading that research and started to learn a bit more, because I was really keen to learn a bit more about them. Started to sit, with them, just looking at their behavior. And then that really took me to wanting to help them. And wanted to do a bit more for them, because I felt that they were really unfairly treated. There's a massive stigma around these birds that shouldn't really exist. And they are fascinating to watch. They have been amazing for my mental health, but also I basically just want people to experience what I did experience, because that was really positive for me. It still is. And I really want people to kind of go through the same thing that I did with these birds, because they're amazing.
What was creating a friendship with the birds like you have a level of trust where you're not really communicating verbally? What was that sort of process like when you first got started?
It starts when it starts, it's the bond is not there. You have to work on the bond pretty much every day, every time you see them. It's a bond that is based on trust, but also on routine. Um, if you represent no harm towards them over a certain period of time, they will definitely get used to you and your presence. And that's what I wanted. One of the reasons why I sit down on the grass with them is because that, in a way, allows them to get used to my presence around them. And it's a lot easier for them to accept a person or a human, if you do that with them, because over time they will start to realize that you represent no harm to them. It does take a considerable amount of time, and a lot of times what I find is that people lose patience with the process and they just decide not to continue with it because they feel they are not going anywhere with it. But actually, when you're befriending crows, there will be setbacks. That is part of the process. You will, achieve 2, 3 milestones in one day, and then in the next day, there's a couple of setbacks and they just don't come down, and that is perfectly normal. These are wild birds and they are geared to be scared of us for a good reason. So
Yeah.
we need to, in a way, teach them that we myself in this case, represent no harm. Now, one of the things about crows is that they recognize people, they recognize individuals, whether they are good or bad towards them. So, on that basis, they will recognize me and they will know that I mean no harm to them, but they will not act the same way with somebody else who either comes with me or not. And I have visited my local crows with some other people, and they wouldn't come down from the trees. It took them about 1 hour for them to actually come down, um, and my friends had to sit next to me, and even so, they wouldn't approach. So they know who are the good people, and they know who are the bad guys, and they will not put themselves into danger if they feel the person that is approaching them is not someone that they
I
recognize.
noticed earlier that you said that this was a great experience for your mental health getting started with this whole thing as well. They're massively intelligent birds. I was watching this video the other day where they were looking at there were these two crows on top of a building and there were these two cats that were they were kind of fighting over food, and the crows sort of, rather than, they knew that they wouldn't be able to go down and get the food themselves, so they started an argument between this cat and this cat over here, and got the two cats to fight to get away from the food so they could go down and get it. They are so intelligent, and I'm interested, what other sort of intelligent behaviors have you noticed while working with them?
So I did see that video, and that video is fascinating. Uh, that's crows for you. They are witty and they know exactly what they're doing. Working with them made me realize that they can quickly outsmart you no matter what, because they learn everything about you. Especially when they are in captivity, they have the time, and when they have the time, that's dangerous because they watch you and they learn absolutely everything about you, especially the things that cause some sort of reaction. And they will pursue that reaction nonstop. I mean, I love them for it. They are very stubborn. They are birds, because they are so intelligent, they need to be constantly stimulated. So, working with these birds means that I have to be always looking at things for them to do. And the ones that I have disabled birds. So these are birds that cannot be released. They have injuries that are basically permanent, and as a result of that, they cannot be released. So the ones that I have at the moment, they're all disabled, which means that I am their main guardian or responsible for them until the end of their lives. And so I have to work with them on a daily basis, as I have to create all sorts of enrichment for them. And I have seen behaviors that I also see in wild crows that I visit on a daily basis. So I see them caching, and the rooks in particular, because there's two of them, they are constantly stealing the caches of each other. So this is something that happens in the wild, and it's also very, very interesting in the sense that they become better at hiding from the other one. And the interesting thing is, although the aviary where they are is quite large, they have quite a lot of space. Obviously, it's still an enclosed space, and as a result, there's not a lot of places where they could hide the food, or so I thought. I find food in the weirdest places of that aviary, even on the ceiling of the aviary. I don't know how they do it, but they stick pieces of meat in the top of the aviary. And obviously, I have to look for the caches, because it's food that can go bad, so it needs to be washed and cleaned. And as a result of that, I find caches on the weird. That is a great testimony to their intelligence, because they become a lot better at caching things even though they have a smaller space. So they're very adaptable. They don't let anything kind of get in the way of what they want to do. So if they want to hide a piece of meat from their colleague or friend in this case, they will, and they will succeed at it. And that's a great way, of it shows how smart they are, really.
Yeah, it's really quite impressive, and I also noticed I've seen a couple videos. One with Icarus, I believe, was one of the crows that you have, and you were teaching it
Yeah.
to play the piano, and that's just fascinating to me. I mean, how long did that take to get the crow to sort of recognize the keys on the piano?
So Icarus is actually a small corvid. I did not take a long time to teach him to do that. That was my second take of teaching him to play the piano. And what was surprising was that even though he didn't get it at first, the second time he got it, but he got it exactly the same tones and the same times that I've played the piano.
Oh wow.
That was shocking. I was as shocked as everybody else, trust me, because I was not expecting that at all. Um, I also have the rooks in particular. They're very good at doing puzzles as well. So any sort of dog puzzle, they nail the puzzle within 10 minutes. If it's a very complex puzzle, for example. If it is a less complex puzzle, 2 minutes, if that. It's it's fascinating to see how their brain works. They spend a considerable amount of time trying, and then if they are not able to go anywhere with it, they give themselves time. They go get food, they peck somewhere out of frustration a lot of the times, but then they go back to it again, and they will try it, and they will try it until they succeed it's just amazing. It's amazing. It's just it's brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, they really are stellar creatures. I wanted to go back a second because you mentioned that the birds that you have all have permanent disabilities and things like that. Did you discover them on these walks, or did someone else bring them to you? I mean, how did you get the crows with disabilities?
So Icarus, actually, I did bump into him on my walk. That was about a year ago. Um, the others, I'm a volunteer at the local rescue, so I help with the corvids there, and all the corvids that need to be released, they tend to come here first. It's a transitional thing, and then they are released. Um, and so my birds, the ones that I've got right now, so the rooks came from there. Um, they were babies when they came to me. I wasn't expecting to keep them permanently, but unfortunately, as the rehabilitation process continued, we realized that they had quite a lot of severe issues with their bones that would cause them quite a lot of problems in the long run if they were to be released. I also have two magpies. I don't show them a lot because one is blind, so she interacts but doesn't interact a lot. And she has a partner now that has a broken wing, so cannot fly. So those are also permanently with me. Icarus has a condition that causes. First, he's not flying at the moment. He's never flew since he was with me. He hasn't flown at all. But he's got an issue in one of the wings that's affecting the neck, and it doesn't have any other solution. It's something that he's going to live with for the rest of his life. So that's his main issue. But yeah, they are happy birds. They have a great vet. I work with a fantastic vet that sees them every year, or if there is a flare up, for example, for the rooks or even for Icarus. Icarus had to have surgery, I think it's in February or March, to remove a lump that grew on his head. And it was actually affecting his vision to a certain point too. That was very scary. I thought I was going to lose him, but he's a little wonder. He pulled through, he survived, and he's doing amazing now. And even though he doesn't fly, he's a happy bird. As you can see by my videos, he's very interactive, he's well stimulated, and he's very smart.
I'm a pet owner, but I don't think with a traditional dog or a cat, I don't think you have the same sort of interactions with them that I noticed that you do with some of these birds. One of the videos I was interested in, it dealt with the crows that are in the wild and how they have sort of this aggression and sort of kind of like a pack mentality almost. Um, do they get aggressive towards you at all when you're out in the wild? The ones that don't know you?
Never, never. They are, the sweetest that they can be for a wildie, as I call them. Um, Aggression is normal in crows because it's a way of assuring that territories are not stolen from them. It's a way of keeping the pecking order in the right place. And it's also a way of protecting resource, protecting their babies. Crows can get extremely aggressive in the nesting season, for example, because of their hormones, which will be high up. They tend to be extremely aggressive. And a lot of people experience that aggressiveness during that time if they walk very closely to either their nests or their babies who fledged. So that can happen, but never happened to me. And I see, besides the crows that I see in the park, I see three other pairs or families on my walk home, and I've met their babies. I've been very close to their babies, and they've never attacked me. I suppose because as you progress in your relationship with the crows, they start to recognize again that you're not a menace, that you're not a scary person, that you're not going to do any harm towards them. And when you have that bond well established, you don't have to worry about being attacked. It's very, very difficult to be attacked if you have a very strong relationship with them and if they know you for a considerable amount of time as well. But it can happen. It does usually happen in the nesting season, not so much in the other times of the year.
I think it's interesting while we were waiting for this to load up, we were talking about your children and the birds have a relationship with your family, like they eat with you and they interact with you on in your family time as well. I think that's sort of fascinating. Can you say what you were talking about a little bit just now with the whole relationship your kids have with them as well?
Yes, sure. So, because the birds that I currently have cannot be released, and because they are extremely smart, as we've been discussing, it's really important that they strike important bonds with all of my family members. So that will be me and my children, and they are amazing with my children. The rooks can be a bit boisterous, but for example, Icarus has got a lovely bond with my youngest. They play together. Sometimes she's on her iPad and he just joins and tries to peck it. I do have quite a lot of videos of them interacting, and it's just really lovely to see. And I think that really sets a great example for my kids as well as they grow up, because they learn to grow up being respectful of all living creatures. And to me, that's paramount. That is the message that I'm really putting across out there, not just with my channels online, but also at home, giving the example and making sure that I'm creating, you know, good member good humans, really, that will go on and do all the same good that hopefully I am doing too.
Yeah, it's really beautiful to see that. I love the family dynamic that you have both with the birds and what you're talking about with your family. I think the trust and the respect that you gather from both sides of those relationships are really fascinating to me. Going back to what we were talking about with you rehabilitate the crows and that are injured and everything like that.
Mhm.
What's the process like when I know you said some of them don't get released back in the wild, but some of them do? What's that process like? How do you sort of reincorporate them back into the wild?
That is the most rewarding part, really, of the rehabilitation of them. So, for example, this summer I had 6 magpies. Magpies are also part of the Corvid family, and they came to me as babies from different rescues. Actually, they came here to grow, to develop. It's really important that all corvids are released in groups rather than individually. They will have a higher chance of survival if they are released in groups. So if I raise them in a group and then release them in a group, it is much more likely that I'll end up seeing them a few weeks later. And that's exactly what happened. So I raised these magpies for about 2 months. It's quite intense. You need to feed them initially almost at every hour, sometimes earlier than that, every 20 to 30 minutes. 6 of them, 6 mouths, begging for food. Their food is also, it needs to be a specific type of food so that they grow up strong, so that their bones don't get brittle. They need also to have a lot of enrichment to prepare them for what's going to happen in the wild when they are released. So the a lot of the rehabilitation of the babies is about the enrichment that I put out for them. It needs to be as similar as to what they will find in the wild. And then as they start growing, they will need to start looking for food. So what I do is I usually hide food in strategic places, and then they will go for, look for that food. I don't put the food in a plate, because that is not what they are going to find in the wild. In a way, I teach them how to find food for themselves. And and then I basically, when I feel that they are all fine to be released, they are all released together. And when they were released, I always get worried. I always get, because it's like it's a mom instinct. I nurtured these birds for
Yeah.
2 3 months, and then all of a sudden I have to release them. But that is the right thing to do, and I am so happy that I see them still today. They come to visit me on literally once or twice a week now, not every day like they used to. So initially, when they were released, they used to come every day, because what I do is soft release. What that means is that I will supplement their food by placing some food available to them out there outside. They will know when they are released where the food is, and they have come to get food for the first couple of weeks. Now they don't come as often, but when they do come, they all come together, and it's really lovely to see them all, because my garden is not very big. So imagine 6 magpies. They're all looking quite big now as well. So 6 of them all kind of lining the garden is fascinating. It's so lovely. So yeah, so that is the nicest part. Releasing them is the nicest part. Last year I also managed to release about 6 jackdaws successfully as well.
It's so cool to me that they get to sort of come into your life as well. A lot of people, they wouldn't allow these things into their home. They wouldn't allow these creatures to sort of come around their family and things like that. And you mentioned earlier that there are a lot of stigmas around them as well. A lot of the human lore that we have around them is very fascinating to me as well. I was reading an article about feudal Japan. And one of the ways when they were having wars, one of the ways the warriors would know that other warriors were coming to battle with them is they would have crows coming to sort of to feed off of the soldiers on the battlefield that were approaching them, the dead soldiers and things like that. Do you have any other sort of like fun facts about, lore or literature around our human crows in the past?
About lore, I mean, I can tell you about the English facts, crows in particular, and ravens. In the UK, have always been linked to witchcraft and to the occult, to the dark side of things. Um, but really, they're just birds. They are not
Yeah.
bad omens like a lot of people think they are. The fact that I walk with them in the park does not make me a witch. No disrespect. I mean, each to their own. But I'm not particularly inclined towards that. Um, uh, they they are just birds. They are birds that are very similar to
Right.
us as well, actually. And I don't think people that have this stigma, that think that they are a bad omen, that they bring bad news, in certain parts of the world, these birds are actually linked to a lot of positive things. There are a lot of folklore stories that are positive. They are birds that used to signify change. The fact that they are black, they're not even black, by the way, because if you look at them in the sun, they shimmer in completely different tones of blue and blue, greenish, and even purple. So they're not even fully black, like a lot of people like to believe. Um, these are birds that are very similar to us, and I suppose because of that, people back in the previous centuries, didn't really like that. They felt that that was somewhat scary. I mean, they didn't know as much as we know today, I suppose. So obviously, anything that was a little bit, um, different would be scary for them. These birds, they are boisterous. They can be very cheeky if they want something. And that means that a lot of the times, they could scare people as a result because of their
Right.
upfront sort of personalities. But they are amazing birds. They are very intelligent. And in my view, I love all of the lore that exists around them. I do, but as long as it doesn't impact on them. The problem with these negative connotations about crows and death and bad omens, that means that a lot of people do not like them, and they chase them and they persecute them. And on that basis alone, I think that it's unfair and it's unjustified. It's unjust because these birds do not deserve the label that we humans gave them.
And it does seem like a lot of that lore that I was talking about is sort of this olden time, um, dated sort of philosophy about them as well. I kind of agree. I think they're a bird that it doesn't seem like a lot of people pay attention to in the same manner as like a parrot or a macaw or something like that. One of these vibrant, colorful birds.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think it's very interesting to see. Um, like when I was a kid and we would go to a museum and they would have like an insect exhibit, so to speak. Um, it was interesting to me to see how kids played with the bugs when a lot of kids were like, "Ew, icky," it seems like that sort of same same scenario as well. But
Yeah,
have you ever watched the cartoon Rick and Morty?
I did. And I actually have a post about that on TikTok. Yes, I did. It's quite funny, isn't it?
I love it. I think it's hilarious. For people that are listening that are unfamiliar, there's an episode of this cartoon where Rick and Morty they create a corvid or crow army and they join forces with all the crows around the world. Um, so my question to you is: are you preparing for a scenario like that? And could we theoretically join together with the crows?
I already have my army. Maybe I am. I think we should definitely join more with the crows. They are amazing birds in terms of defense, absolutely. You were asking me about some fun facts. I can give you a few. If people that own chickens report that by feeding the crows tend to protect the chickens from predators by either sounding the alarm when there is a predator around, or by chasing the predator away if it is, for example, a hawk. So crows are great at defense. You really want to have them on your side. They're also amazing warriors, okay? So they will defend their babies to death if needed. Um, and they have very strong bonds, and those bonds can actually be as strong with their with their pair, but also with their mate, but also with a human. And they will be able to tell you if something is not quite right as well. So I read somewhere that in, I believe it was Portland, there was this lady that used to feed the crows, and the neighbors didn't really like that, but she made the neighbors start feeding the crows somehow. And after a few years, um, there was one of the elderly neighbors that was getting out of the car. I think it was in the winter, it was icy, and that person slid and fell. And the crows sounded the alarm, but sounded the alarm so insistently that most of the neighbors came out to check on that. And then they saw the neighbor fell on the floor. So that is an amazing feat on itself. Crows are extremely loyal to those that help them in times of need. And there are a lot of examples of that on Twitter and Reddit. You can read all of those things through those posts. And it's amazing because these are birds that are always really looking at what we are doing. They are birds that can, if something is not right, they can feel it straight away, and they will voice that either with their peers or to those that, they feel that they're allies, really. Um, so on that basis alone, crows are great to have on your side, especially if you're planning to conquer the world for sure.
Well, if you're planning the overtaking, then you're going to be first on my list to contact. So, well,
There's many like
I
me, though, I have to say. There's other people that also have a murder of crows that they feed but also interact with, and I do follow quite a few, and I just love that because the more people get to know these birds, the better for these birds as well. You were talking about the parrots and how a lot of people are drawn to them a lot more than they are, for example, to crows. I think it's because crows have been with us and are there all the time. And when we have something that's always there, we don't really appreciate it. But if we give them our time, I can guarantee that what you get back in return is worth every single minute. every single minute of that time that you spent with them.
That's beautiful. The idea of like a therapy pet. Have you heard of any? Have you heard of anybody using crows as like a therapy animal as well? Because I mean, that's amazing that
Yes.
they saved that woman in Portland you were talking about.
That was a very interesting story. It's on Reddit, by the way, and yeah, I was amazed, but not surprised really, because I know these
Right.
birds and I know what they're capable of, and I know they're very loyal and they are very aware, very aware. Anything that's different in their environment, they will definitely pick up on it. I have I know someone from Corvid Dawn who uses disabled corvids as support pet, not pets, because we don't the disabled birds, we don't even call them pets, but they are support animals, and there is a lot of goodness from interacting with these animals. Crows in particular are very attuned to our emotions, and because they are very similar at the way they approach things, like us, there is a very strong connection that is formed early on. But I do know that Corvidon has something on mental health support that involves the corvids, and she's doing an amazing work.
That's amazing. And I mean, I've seen people that use snakes as therapy animals. I've seen people that use goats as therapy animals. I guarantee you that there is a market for a therapy crow.
Possibly. There are educational crows, though, and I think in the US, crows can only be kept um, if they are registered as an educating animal, I believe. I, I, I'm not very aware of the laws there, but in the UK, as long as the welfare of the animal is ensured, we have to meet quite a lot of welfare guidelines here in order to be able to keep them in captivity. As long as that happens, then it's good. But I do not use my animals for exhibitions or anything like that. I don't think they would adapt well to that at all. But some that are raised from babies, and I know there's a few ravens in the UK that do that. They do go into exhibitions in schools and for children to get to know, but also birds of prey as well, not just corvids.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that is fascinating to me, and I think it's so cool that you are treating them with this respect as well. I mean, I could easily be seen as like some sideshow act or something like that, like you're talking about, and I don't think that's the case at all. I think that you have a tremendous respect for them, and the fact that you bring them in with your family and let them eat with your at your dinner table with you and things like that. I mean, that's just it's so interesting. It's so interesting to me. Um, I want to go back a second to what we were talking about with the human interaction and the thoughts about the crows. So this is kind of off the wall, but there's a conspiracy theory out there, and I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but I can't believe people actually believe this. There is a hashtag spreading around called "Birds Aren't Real." Have you heard about it?
I have, yes. It infuriates me. I tell you, that infuriates me. They are very much real. I can tell you that. I, yeah. It's one of the things
Well,
about rehabilitation is that you get to see the birds in ways that you wouldn't otherwise in the wild. So they do bleed. They do get diseases, and they do die, and it's very, very sad. So they are not robots. They are not. They are not drones.
they're not
Absolutely
drones.
no. Their heart beats. They breathe. They've got lungs. They've got blood. I can tell you, drones are not that sophisticated yet. I'm not sure in a few years from now, but right now they're not like there yet. as a rehabilitator of birds, I can tell you that birds are very much real. They have a heart, they have lungs, they bleed, they get, sick, and yes, they are definitely not drones. In order for them to be drones, I mean, these drones would have to be very sophisticated. I do not, I don't think we're there yet in building that kind of thing. Um, the birds are complex. They do behave in ways that are very normal for them. We're just not used to paying too much attention to that. And I think we are starting to do that now. There's quite a lot of research coming out, not just on corvids, but also in birds in general. Birds in the past were thought to be extremely dumb, not intelligent at all. And look how the tables turned nowadays. We know that that's not true. We also know that they are very capable of forging very strong relationships that could last a lifetime even with their mates. And they have very, very complex societies as well. They are actually amazing. So they are not drones, but I think that people need to pay attention to them a little bit more and realize that birds do behave in very interesting and funny ways sometimes as well.
Well, Leonor, we are answering the important questions today. Trust me. So, I am, I am very impressed with what you do. I think it's just fascinating. I love watching your live streams as well, where there's a lot of bird poop, but but it's seeing you interact with these animals on the daily is really kind of fascinating to me, and I think it's just so cool to
Thank
watch
you.
how it all plays out, and I'm very excited to see what comes from you in the future. If somebody wants to find more out about you, where can they go to do that? I know you've got social media. Do you have a website as well? Like, where can people find out more about Corvid Corner and what you're doing with the birds?
So I have obviously my main social media platform is TikTok. That's where I started this whole journey. But I'm also on Instagram with the same name, and I have a blog. But to be very honest, I haven't been writing on it too much because I just don't have the time. I
Yeah.
want to, and that's a project that I really have to kind of get my head around it and start doing it. There is quite a lot of material that I could use to write something, and that's a project that I really have to consider doing, because not between my relationship with the crows, the wild crows, and also the crows that I work here, my disabled ones, I have a lot of interesting facts and a lot of experiences that I think would be very, very good at, not just proving the research that already exists, but maybe adding a little bit to it as well, hopefully.
I didn't ask earlier. You said that you also were a professor at a university, I believe, or you work at a university with another field of
Yes.
study. What other field of study is that?
I'm a principal lecturer of business, actually.
Oh, okay. Well,
Very different.
it's so cool. Yeah. It's so cool to see how this I think the entire story of how you got started with just going for a walk and then sort of having this interest in them, and you've created this relationship. It's really a fascinating story to hear. And I really, like I said, I'm very impressed with everything that I see you doing on social media. It's really
Thank you.
cool to see you're providing all the awareness for these animals, and giving them a different frame of reference is really impressive. So kudos to you. I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love doing that. I love changing perceptions in people. And I think that I am doing that a little bit at a time. I have a lot of people that now contact me to say, I didn't really pay much attention to these birds before, but because of you, I went out there and started to get to know my local crows. And I know this one that does this, and I know that one that does that. And when I read these messages, my heart gets so happy and so full of joy, because it means that what I am doing is actually resonating with people, and it's actually, the message is coming across as it should. And there is nothing better than that. I think, as I said earlier, I want people to experience the same thing that I experienced with these birds. It is possible, but it will take time and commitment, but it's totally worth it.
I love what you do, and I think people should definitely go check you out. I'm going to put links to
Thank you.
all of your social media down in the show notes below, and everybody can check you out online. I think it's a really cool follow, and I've learned a lot about crows that I never knew. I think it's very informative, so it's really cool. Leonor, I want to be a good steward of your time, and we're winding down towards the end of the episode. And at the end of every single episode, I ask all my guests the same question. It's one question in two parts, and it's really cool because it really helps people to get an understanding of who the person I'm speaking with is. You can answer it in any way. I've had one guy tell me he wants to learn how to do a kickflip on a skateboard. I've had one guy tell me that he wants to catch a sturgeon when he goes fishing this summer. So whatever you want to answer is perfectly fine with me. But
Okay.
here we go. You ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. All right. So what was the last goal you completed, and what is the next goal that you want to set for yourself?
So my last goal that I completed, I've actually completed a course from the University of Edinburgh about animal welfare. Um, and that was my last goal. I'm all about improving myself and learning, especially when it comes to corvids, and this links very well with my rehabilitation experience. Um, Now, my next goal is to write something that will actually change the perspectives of these birds even more. So I want to add to the existing research. I want to produce a piece of research that is published, um, and that's it, really. That's my goal. So that's what I'm working towards. I do have quite a lot of knowledge on the research aspect of things because of all of the papers that I did read, but I want to add to the scientific community uh, regarding these birds. So I have a few projects up my sleeve.
I would totally love to read about that. Is there any field of study in particular about the birds? Is it like their relationship issues? Is it their what type of study do you have in mind?
So over the last 4 years, I have accumulated a lot of video footage from the crows in the park, and I want to use that as the platform for this research. I want to focus in behavior. There are two possible avenues that I want to explore: bird bath behavior for corvids, or how they weigh things as well. So there is there's also another thing. So for example, crows are the not crows, so magpies were actually the only ones that self-identified in the mirror. So there's three things possible, but obviously I'm still building my knowledge in that area, so I don't really know which way I'm going to go yet. It will have to be where there is definitely a gap of knowledge so that I can fill that in with what I have. And what I have is research. Observation is research. So I just need to sit down and catalog pretty much all of my videos and then kind of build up from there, and hopefully get the support from my university to publish something as a result.
Well, that is just fascinating. And I will say this, I believe that there is a total randomness to things, and you have no idea who will see your content and, and be like, hey, I need to talk to that person. I'm sure there's a scientist somewhere that studies crows as well that would love to be in touch with you. So if you
There
do,
is, there
maybe
is.
this pod- well, I think that's amazing. I love how intentional you are about dealing with these and also spreading the awareness to other people. I've learned a lot from this podcast, and I'm sure that the people listening will. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate your time coming on, and I enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for coming on and spending your time with me.
Thank you for having me, Chris. It was lovely.